26 goddamn stairs. I knew exactly how many because I'd climbed them dozens of times over the past few months. That day, however, it seemed like 2,600. What could have possessed my sister to buy a house on the hill? With my head down, I felt the heavy touch of each step reverberate in my body as I struggled to rise on legs that no longer had any zest left in them. While my tired body begged for relief, my brain was on overdrive, involuntarily going from one thought to the next, unwilling to shut down. All I wanted was some peace, but I was once again denied even that simple pleasure. I had been working non-stop for the past 3 days, and the effects of it were starting to take their toll. Exhausted, I collapsed into a cushioned chair on my sister's patio. Forget about dinner. I'd lost my appetite yesterday after finally making arrangements for her service at St. Paul's. I remembered thinking about the cold beer in the fridge. Too tired. Maybe later. I closed my eyes and prayed that when I opened them, the last couple months would turn out to be nothing more than a nightmare. No such luck. There wasn't much left to do after the funeral. All the important tasks were behind me. At least when Mom and Dad died, Beth was there to help me. This time there was no one to help. The message from my ex-wife came as a surprise, considering how I ended the conversation. I'm sorry for your loss. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Too late for that, I thought. Beth and I were born 11 months apart. I like to tell everyone that we were twins, and since we were born the same year, most believed it. That was until my baller sister set the record straight. She was happy to have her own identity, but we were as close as twins can be. That memory brings a smile to my lips, but it is replaced by a feeling of emptiness. Our parents died 8 years ago in a car accident while vacationing in Hawaii. It was their first big vacation in 20 years. Beth got the call around 2 in the morning, but waited until 7 to call me. She told me later that she wanted me to get another good night's sleep. Besides, there was nothing we could do until morning anyway. Such was my sister, always thinking of others first. Our dad was an only child, and my mom had 2 sisters we hadn't seen in years. We called them the next day with the bad news. Both said they would fly in for the funeral but wouldn't stay. The funeral home took over and did most of the work. They arranged to transport our parents' bodies home, organized the church service, and even helped us write an obituary for the newspaper. It wasn't easy for either of us, but together we got through it. Now I was alone, and not just with my thoughts. Every time I saw Beth's picture on my cell phone, it made my heart feel a little lighter. Hey, sis, I know I should have answered you yesterday, but Mandy and I stayed up late at the marriage counselor's office and then went out to dinner to talk further. It might work out in the end, I purred, happy for the first time in a long time. She fell silent. Beth, are you still there? Yes, I'm still here. I'm happy for you two. I really am. Another pause. Steve, I seem to have a little problem. I need a favor from you. I hadn't heard her sound this serious since she and David broke up 4 years ago. What's the matter? Did you lose your license again? What's it cost to get your ass out this time? Beth had to be the worst driver on the planet. It's a little more serious this time. She fell silent again, and I thought I heard a muffled cry. Beth, what's the matter? Steve, I have ovarian cancer, she whispered. In 1 millisecond, my life changed forever. How is that possible? You're only 33 years old. No one knows exactly why. All I know is that I'm in that damn unlucky 7% group and I have to take care of it. I found out about it a week ago and I was scheduled for surgery on Monday. I'd really like my big brother to be here if at all possible. Let me take care of some things, pack a bag and be there by noon tomorrow. Why didn't you call me sooner? I didn't want to worry you. Besides, the doctor said it would be a walk in the park. He's done hundreds of these surgeries before and said my prognosis is pretty favorable. I just wish I had you with me, that's all. It wasn't until after the surgery that I realized my sister had greatly downplayed the seriousness of her condition. A walk in the park. The cancer was stronger than she realized. The surgeon ended up removing much more than he had originally planned. I'm confident we've removed everything. However, your sister will need 2 or more rounds of chemotherapy to make sure we destroy any remaining cancer cells. Beth has a long and difficult recovery ahead of her, but she is young and fighting. This will help. Like my sister, I can't say the doctor intentionally lied to me that morning. Months later, though, I remembered that he never looked me in the eye. I should have known. I lived 3 hours away from Beth, but I traveled back and forth every weekend to help out. Steve, you don't have to come every weekend. You have your own life, don't you? Besides, I don't want you shopping for me anymore. A red-headed wig? Really? I look like I should be selling my ass on a street corner when I put it on. She put the wig on and struck a pose. We both laughed. It felt good. Over the next 6 months, 2 things happened. My sister's condition worsened and my marriage broke up. Steve, I know this is going to sound cruel, but how can we work on our marriage if you're never around? Mandy was right. It sounded harsh, and it turned me away from what was left of our marriage. I ended up choosing my sister over my wife. The last 2 months had been hard. I became an almost permanent guest at Beth's house. I had accrued 3 weeks of vacation and 10 days of sick leave. I would come in every 3rd day after work, stay overnight, and leave by 10 o'clock the next morning to be back at work by 1 o'clock. It made the days terribly long. Her neighbors were a godsend. They cooked her meals, and someone always slept in her house when I couldn't be there. Thanks to all of us, Beth was getting the best care a person could ever have. You do realize I can't do this, right? Asked Beth. The solemn question still hung in the air after it came off her lips. All I'm doing is putting off the inevitable, and we both know it. She said in a voice just above a whisper, There you go again, talking nonsense. Don't you know there's no way in the world I'm going to let you give up? She weighed about 95 pounds and looked worse every day. But even still, there was no force in the world that could take her away from me. She wrapped her bony arms around my neck and pulled me to her. In a soft but firm voice, she voiced her desires. I love you like I've never loved anyone else, including David. But the time has come. I've already told them no more chemistry or anything else. I'm too tired to fight any further, and it's not fair to give your life for a losing cause. Maybe you don't realize that's what twins do. They sacrifice each other. That brought a small smile to her face. You're crazy. You know that. What's your point? I used every minute of my vacation and sick leave, and with the blessing of HR, took 10 days off when she came up short. I did everything I could to make her comfortable. Eventually, the medication took over and relieved her of her pain. For the past week, our eyes never took our eyes off each other. I was losing not only my sister, but my best friend and a part of myself. How do you let go of someone who has been a part of your life for 33 years? I can still close my eyes and see us as children playing in the yard, getting out of bed and sneaking into the kitchen for a late-night snack of pickles and olives. Together, we endured all the joys and sorrows that life threw our way, including this one. Too weak to speak or even cry, we met the end together. I wrapped my arms around her, cradling her bony body against my chest. Laying my head next to hers, I closed my eyes and whispered in her ear what was on my heart, as my tear ducts leaked out what little was left in them. I felt her breathing become shallow. The faint beats of her heart slowed and finally stopped. My beautiful sister was gone. Her funeral service was small and intimate. I was comforted by the fact that she was now with our parents. Beth's last wish was to be cremated and her ashes scattered in a field of wildflowers. I would respect her wish, but not now. I still wasn't ready to let her go. Beth had made sure to take all of her personal belongings beforehand. A few women from her church came over a few days later and collected all of her clothes. They planned to wash it and distribute it to the needy in the parish. Her neighbor knew of a family that was going through a difficult time and could really use her furniture. Beth was still helping others. Her will was handwritten and simple. Big brother, I know I don't have a lot of things, but everything I have belongs to you, except for my wedding album. Please give it to David. Maybe it will help him remember what we once had. One last thing, brother. Don't grieve for me. I'm in a better place now, and I need you to keep me going. Find someone or something to give your life meaning. If not for yourself, then for me. I put the house on the market, picked up my sister's urn, and went back to my old life. My work gave me a reason to keep breathing. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. No family, no wife. I had friends, but none of them were close enough to help me unload what I carried inside me. For almost a year, I had lived for my sister, and now I had nothing to fill the hours of loneliness that plagued me. At night, my mind continued to torment me. Hadn't I suffered enough? Memories came in flashbacks, images dancing on the inside of my eyelids. I prayed for insight, but all I got were memories of a life that no longer existed. My soul was lost in an empty shell. It was 6 o'clock, and I was just on my way home from work. As always, I was in no hurry to get home to an empty house. As I turned the corner, his scent filled my nostrils long before I saw him. He was leaning against the brick wall of the building where I worked. His greasy hair covered his face. He could barely stay on his feet. I stopped 2 steps away from him. Here! I handed him 3 $20 bills. Buy yourself something to eat and maybe a change of clothes. He raised his head, and his sunken dark eyes met mine. A thin, trembling hand reached out and slowly snatched the bills from my hand. A hoarse, "Thanks, buddy," was all he offered. "Just don't drink that. It'll be all the thanks I need." I turned and walked to my car, the disgusting smell of body odor and urine still stirring my senses. I got into my car and looked back at the wall, expecting the man to be long gone, enjoying his newfound wealth. Instead, he just stood there looking at me, the 320s still sticking out of his grubby fist. I smiled, waved, and drove out of the parking lot. I spent the next 2 days asking myself why I did it. I could have given him so much more, but that wasn't the point. I did it without even thinking about it. His surprised look still gives me a hard time. Did he, like me, also have no one who didn't care if he lived or died? Memories kept me going. I made a scrapbook of my and Beth's years together. I was still living in the past. I saw her when I was picking up something for dinner on my way home from work. She was at least 50, and she wasn't happy about me invading her space. Her clothes looked like rags, and the once white tennis shoes on her feet looked at least 3 sizes too big. "Don't come any closer, I have a knife," her voice warned me, but her eyes told a different story. I stopped about 4 feet away from her and showed her my open hands. "Are you hungry?" She didn't answer anything. "Do you have a place to stay?" Nothing. "Wait here," I said, pointing at her. I rushed across the street to McDonald's. I bought 2 Big Macs, 2 large portions of fries, and 2 bottles of water. I held out the bag of food to her. She snatched it up, stepped back, looked inside, and then looked at me again. "At least I'll know you'll have something in your stomach today." I pulled 2 20s out of my wallet and told her to get a pair of matching shoes. She looked at the money but didn't budge. I took a step closer and held my hand out a little farther. We stood there looking at each other. Finally, she took the money, perhaps fearing that if she waited any longer, I would take it away. I took a step back, which seemed to diffuse the tension between us. "Have a nice evening." Through the windshield, I watched her hold the package tightly to her chest. It seemed like that bag of food was all that stood between her and starvation. Maybe it was. Over the next 4 weeks, I helped people 3 times who were much worse off than I was. In the end, we were both left with something more than when we first met. I spotted her in an alley not far from where I worked. I heard her deep cough echoing off the walls between buildings and watched in horror as she spat out a mouthful of blood onto the ground at her feet. She ran away from me the first 3 times I tried to approach her. Each time I opened my mouth to speak, all I saw was the back of the dirty coat she was wearing heading down the alley away from me. Saturday's confrontation took the better part of an hour. She lurked behind a dumpster, and I sat on the hood of my car and watched her. Neither of us said a word or made a single sudden movement. Her eyes moved back and forth from me to the small blue suitcase and white bag from the drugstore that lay on the ground between us. "What do you want from me?" asked a thin voice from the alley. "Nothing. You're sick and you need what's in the suitcase to get better." "What's in the suitcase?" "Clean clothes and a few other things I thought you might like." "Why are you doing this? Did my mother send you?" "I don't know your mother, but to answer your question, I'm doing this for my sister." "Is she there with you?" "No. She died a couple months ago." "I'm sorry." "Me too. But if you don't get better soon, you can join her." She didn't answer anything. The wait went on for another 20 minutes. She was 16 at the most. Life on the streets was taking its toll. Watching me, she looked in her bag, took a long swallow of cough medicine, then opened her suitcase. "I guessed your size. I hope you like them better than what you're wearing." She smiled, peering into the envelope on top. I never saw this girl again. One can only hope she found her way home. And me, I still continue to help people one at a time, trying to make a difference, just like Beth would have done. Mandy and I started communicating again. I emailed her and called her a week later. I didn't realize until recently how much I missed the sound of her voice. While I'm not sure anything will come of it, at least I'm trying, and not for Beth, but for myself. In the spring, as I promised my sister, I scattered her ashes in a field of purple phlox. With that act, Beth returned to the earth, and I finally had the confidence that one day we would be together again. For now, I had to move on.